Welcome to the Delivery Layer podcast. I'm Solomon Khan, the founder of Delivery Layer, and I'm excited to be here with our guest, Scott Breitenother. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Scott is the founder and CEO of Brooklyn Data Company, which is now a Velir Company. And
That's correct.
Many of you will have known Brooklyn Data Company. They're an excellent data consulting company. But Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are?
How far back do you want me to go?
Just go from your consulting days, and we
Go
can take
consulting
it from there.
days. Okay. Well, that's all I've ever known. So you want it all, don't you? So, well, first of all, I'm excited to be the first guest on this podcast. So thank you very much, Solomon. It's an honor. I understand that you reached out to a couple other folks and they were busy, and so somehow I became first. So I appreciate that. Happy to be your third choice. So jumping into my background. So I'm Scott. I'm founder of Brooklyn Data, a Velir Company. We're a data and analytics consultancy that really specializes on kind of the cloud data tooling and helping companies of all shapes and sizes build out and implement a data strategy and a data culture. But kind of maybe zooming back, I studied I studied business. I studied business in undergrad and grad school, and then I started management consulting. And in management consulting, it was strategy, due diligence work, essentially helping companies to kind of make decisions on, make strategic decisions, as well as whether buy a company or sell a company. And it was a really cool experience to essentially jump into a completely new industry every kind of few weeks or few months and become an expert. And that's what kind of when I honestly fell in love with that. And it was very quantitative, very analytical, but I would say Excel was as technical as it got. And we pushed the limits of Excel. As soon as you could do a million rows, we did 1,000,002.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And on my very last project in consulting, I got access to one of our clients' data warehouses, and it was so much fun. I got to write some SQL, and looking back, it was horrific SQL. I really had no idea. Someone had written a query, where you can kind of do this, and I modified it and I hacked it. I really didn't know what I was doing, but it was a lot of fun. And so kind of that's where I learned, how to work with a team, how to kind of crack problems, how to, apply frameworks. And then I decided to move to New York, and I started as an early team member at Casper, the mattress company. And I started the data team there and kind of built out the data team, the data stack. And I think right place, right time, dumb luck. We were there right at the beginning of this modern data stack. And we didn't even call it that back then. We were all just trying to figure out what it was. And, we were early users of dbt. I remember we used Redshift, dbt, Stitch, and Looker. And, we found that, we were kind of, it was the Wild West. We were learning as we went, and people would actually come to us and ask questions, and we'd give them advice. And then after a few years of that, I was like, hey, I think there's a business. And so I kind of left Casper and started Brooklyn Data, and fast forward, I think 4.5 years, and we're a 100-person company, and we just got acquired 6 weeks ago. And like I say, I give you a lot of credit for this, Solomon. Solomon, has been my guru along the way and gave me sage advice throughout the Brooklyn Data experience. So thank you.
Oh, no problem. And I'm going to clip that as a testimonial at some point. But
sage advice.
But it's interesting because we met when I was running the data team at Paperless Post, and you started running the data team at Casper, and for whatever reason, I was a couple months ahead of where you were, and so
of course,
it the
story of my life. Solomon is always a couple months ahead of me.
Well, so your podcast is dropping soon, right? You were definitely the number one guest for a reason, though, and it's because we've sort of seen each other through a lot over the years in this crazy world of data. And what's always impressed me about the way that you've gone about it is that so two things. Number one, like it seemed like you were always able to sort of identify where things were going a little bit. I think you were like super early on DBT. I think you were super early on a lot of, we take for granted what the modern data stack looks like, but I think you actually played a role not just in your technical work, but also in the sort of evangelism and the community stuff that you did around it to actually make it happen. So that's something super cool that you might not even appreciate about yourself, but having seen it from a little bit disconnected, I can see where it's gone. And yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's true. I mean, it's for people that don't know, Scott is also the founder of the locally optimistic Slack community. And I know that now everybody and their brother has a Slack community, which again, Scott was early in identifying that kind of stuff is interesting.
Well, I mean, there was a number of folks that started this with locally optimistic with me. And I think it was, again, dumb luck. We started a blog and realized, we wouldn't write all the blog posts for that blog. And we tried to con our friends into writing the blog posts and invited them to a Slack community that actually kind of became even bigger than the blog. But it's a fun journey. It's kind of exciting to see. It's like 6,500 people in Locally Optimistic. I remember when there was like 50 people and every single conversation had to be started and continued by the admins. Yeah. And now it's kind of just like this flywheel, self-perpetuating community. Pretty cool.
That's great. So you've obviously seen a lot, and one of the things that I'm hoping that we focus on in this podcast, I think, whatever, there's so many podcasts out there, right? Like my whole thing is I focus on sort of like the business side of data, and like one of the taglines for this podcast is going to be data that drives revenue. So I'm trying to understand from someone who's seen a lot of different companies, number one, be successful and like stand up a data program that really drove impact and changed the trajectory of those companies. But also, I'm sure, having seen situations where people spent a lot of money on data programs that just didn't go anywhere. Yeah. What do you see the successful companies doing right, and what do you see the unsuccessful companies doing wrong?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I think, first of all, you got to take it seriously. I think there is no I think we've gotten past the time where let's hire a data scientist and they'll figure it out. Like, I think now companies actually realize that there need to be we've had too many years of folks hiring a data scientist, them coming in, not having any data infrastructure and having to build it up from scratch. So it's like, I think companies are realizing that it's not like hire a person. And that wasn't picking on data scientists. I was saying people just wanted to click their heels straight to the insights. And I think people have realized that you need to build the foundation. You have to build the culture. And then you can bring in the data science and the insights. It's not just a problem you solve or a muscle you build with one hire. It's kind of a holistic shaping of, it's infrastructure, it's culture, it's how you use data to build decisions, make decisions. I think the other thing that I've seen that companies are really successful is they bring in experts. I remember actually we had conversations about this years ago. I was very anti bringing in consultants, and you were very pro, or for the right specific things. And I'm a convert, and obviously I started a consulting company because companies do what they do very well, and to build. Not all of them need to be experts in data and building up the data infrastructure. They might need to be experts on the insights and understanding their data. And it's hard to expect a company to start building that culture from zero. And so bringing in someone that knows how to build the culture, the stack, I remember early in the days of Casper, I lost days just trying to figure out time zones. I mean, silly stuff. Or how to configure data warehouse permissions, or wide tables versus star schema. Literally just bring someone in that knows this and get you up to speed very, very quickly. And then I think it's really important to build your internal data capabilities. I think what we find our most successful clients, we're often helping them get from 0 to 1, and they're hiring a team, and we're actually helping them hire a team, and we're kind of jointly building that data capability together. And some clients we stick around for a long time. We partner with the internal team, and sometimes we just hand it off at a certain point. And I think that's both of them are wins. Like, but we want to make sure that our clients are building their internal capabilities. Where it hasn't been successful is where politics come in. Where it's like, politics either around data access or definitions of KPIs, or even there isn't buy-in. Like, occasionally we brought in by, a team that is not happy with kind of, how an IT team or a data team has been servicing them, and kind of brings us in as this kind of like, change agent. And I think, it takes us a lot longer to kind of build that trust with the kind of IT folks and the technology folks. On the other hand, it's obviously much more successful where we have the buy-in from leadership, the stakeholders, the data and technology folks from day one. And then I would say don't boil the ocean. Focus on your core data sets and making sure that you're kind of building great insights and dashboards and driving decisions, and stay focused. Make sure that what we try to do is the output of our project isn't bringing data into a data warehouse or cleaning data. The outputs of our projects are typically building a dashboard to make a decision. And so what we try to really focus on is, yes, the data warehouse, bring the data in, ingesting it, cleaning it, like optimizing it for analytical and reporting use cases, adding tests, make sure that it's robust is very important. But really, that's an intermediate product. We really want to be kind of bringing the insights closer to the stakeholder and putting them in a position to make a decision or not make a decision, to kind of influence strategy, because otherwise we're just kind of moving numbers.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. There's a couple of points there. Number one, You're right. I'm a big fan of bringing in consultants. Not because I've run big teams at companies that are very data mature, right? And what I've found is that it's unrealistic to expect anybody to know everything in data. And you never hire people because they know everything. And we've both been around the block for a while in this industry. I imagine neither of us would ever say anything even close to us knowing everything. Like, it's just, there's too much to know. And like I remember even bringing in Brooklyn Data Company for a small project, and it's the little things around how do you organize dev versus prod environments for your data warehouse in order to make sure you don't get yourself into trouble, right? Those kind of things, you will learn them, and either you learn them the hard way or you learn them the easy way, and always better to learn them the easy way. And it's unrealistic to expect any of your friends, like, you can ask your friends about like what tools they chose, but they're never gonna give you to the level of detail on like, oh, it's these configuration settings. So you really need to hire people for that.
Totally. And again, like, that's the secret sauce. We do it hundreds of times. And so for us, it's no big deal. But for, I remember if someone had come to me at Casper and said like, how should we do this? Or what's your favorite tool or stack? I'd say, here are the tools I use. Here's the tools I know. I demoed these other couple ones. At Brooklyn Data or another consultancy, we're testing the assumptions. We're testing different approaches. Every single project is an opportunity to test our assumptions and refine our approach.
Yeah, totally. So I really like that. The IT politics side of things. This is like the classic. So you've got a data team, but then the marketing team isn't happy. So the marketing team goes and hires their own data people to try to pull this in. I'm not even going to dive into that but I think it's interesting. I think that too many people don't take their business departments seriously sometimes. And if someone has gotten to the point where they like, it's probably some sort of mismatch between what the business needs and what IT is providing. I've also seen that a lot of times, and it's an interesting political situation. Thinking through, although back to kind of what you started at and this goes back to your consulting days, your management consulting days, right? So you talked about how one of the benefits there of having that experience was you'd come into a new industry, you'd learn a whole lot about it, you'd kind of become the expert, you'd help people on the strategy side. Have we gotten too, because a lot of early data people kind of fit that mold. Over time, data has moved to become much more technical. Like, have we lost something along the way? Are we like, how do you think about that early experience, and how do you see the way that we approach data now, and what we might be missing there?
It's a great question. I think that the 4 years I spent in management consulting was the most phenomenal way to start a career. The breadth of industries and use cases and cultures. I mean, I worked all over the world. I worked in different industries. I got to kind of, exposure to executive stakeholders. It was like an MBA. I don't know. It was like, it was amazing. And I bring none of those skills, but that just like wealth of that library of experience in different businesses, understanding, how to think about metrics, what metrics are important, what revenue is, just kind of all those things. And it helps me when we're helping our clients, to help me at Casper. It helps. I mean, I've always come from a business background, so I've been really kind of attracted to kind of how data drives a business. And that's the aspect of data that excites me. What we found actually at Casper is very similar to what you described. The early Casper data team, I think, had a little bit more of a business background and had kind of learned some of the technical skills. And then what we realized is at a certain scale, the work gets far more technical, and you start to shift that. Our early Casper data team looked a lot like the stakeholders, maybe slightly more technical, more interest in data. Towards the end, the data team looked a lot like more like the engineering team. And in fact, we transitioned from reporting to the kind of, the CMO to the CTO over those 4 years, because it kind of was better aligned with our kind of goals and challenges. Our mission was to, at the core, we were, how do you hire, retain, and manage technical talent? And that looked a lot more like the tech team than the marketing team towards the end. But you're right. What we lost is we lost a little bit of the closeness with the stakeholders. We lost kind of some of that business insights. What we gained was the ability to do data at scale, to automate things. I mean, we were operating on I would say an order of magnitude more sophistication. And so what I've kind of realized is that to do this right, you need a cross-functional data team. And that's literally how we are designed at Casper, or designed at Brooklyn Data. Is like, we're made up of a number of pods, and each of those pods has data engineers, analytics engineers, and analysts, and is managed by a manager with a data background. And so our goal is, and I would say our philosophy is that you cannot solve a problem with one person. It takes a range of skill sets, and they're all equally as important to deliver, an end-to-end, project from strategy to architecture, to implementation, to analytics, to insights. And so I think that's the trick, is data is a cross-functional activity. I think that sounds like a good, smart way to conclude that thought. Yeah, it's like, I mean, you essentially need a diverse group of skill sets, and kind of combining those is how you do it right.
Okay. And I love that. And that gets us to a topic that I also want to cover with you, because in a good way, right? One of the things that I have seen, besides for your branding skills, which are on point, the worst advice I think I have ever given you was when I tried to have you, instead of call your company Brooklyn Data Company, I was like, you should call it Stack Data, because it's like data stacked backwards. And I think I even bought the domain for you at one time.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you didn't take that advice, because for whatever reason, Brooklyn Data Company really just like connected to people, and I'm at random meetups and someone says they're from Brooklyn Data Company, and someone's like, "Oh, that's a great name." But
well, thank you. But and I'm glad I didn't listen to you on that one.
Yes. But you've really been great at attracting talent and like training people up. And I even remember back in the Casper days, but also at Brooklyn Data Company, like you are not afraid to bring someone that has the right attitude and with good technical skills to say, hey, come on in, and then we're going to get you up to a level where you're operating at what I've seen, but also what the industry has decided is top tier. So how do you do that? Is there something that you look for on the hiring side that you overweight versus underweight compared to other people that are out there hiring? Is it the training? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you first have to start this by the hiring process and the team building process by understanding that this stuff is so new. And not SQL and data warehouse has been around forever, but the technologies we use today are different than we used, 3-4 years ago. And so it's kind of impossible to find someone with, it is impossible to find someone with 10 years of DBT experience or 10 years
Sure.
of Snowflake experience. It just isn't possible. And the pace that things are changing so quickly, you almost want to optimize for someone who can learn, who has like these strong fundamentals. I've always liked to find folks that I would say are artists, and I'll say what I mean. So like, there are painters that, paint a wall blue, and there are painters that paint the kind of the Mona Lisa. And I think they both are called painters. One I would say is more of a tradesman, a person that is, knows a specific skill and knows how to do it very well. And one is kind of just knows the fundamentals and is much more adaptable. And so I'll give you examples like, when you're working with someone that is helping you with A/B testing, you're interviewing someone for A/B testing. It's like, how do you know it's statistically significant? You might ask them, and the kind of the tradesman would say because this button turns green, and the artist would say, you would explain, not even perfectly. I don't need a perfect statistical definition of statistical significance, but like the concepts behind it. And so, what we look for, and in general, I've kind of always looked in my career, people that are learners and adaptable. And so, I'd much rather have someone that is a kind of understands the fundamentals of BI and visualization that is an expert in one tool. I think everybody will be an expert in one tool, but you want to have someone that understands the fundamentals so that whether it's tool A or tool B or tool C, again, they're all, fairly similar once you understand the fundamentals.
Sure.
So it's like hiring folks that are adaptable and are learners, I think is the most important. And then creating an environment where they learn. I've always felt that people don't have enough faith in their abilities to learn. I think that human beings have such an amazing capacity to adapt and learn that kind of too often folks give up or don't. And again, this isn't an hours thing or is it a hard working thing. It's just like it's just having the confidence that they can learn something. Sometimes that's like the only thing that's separating, folks that are successful from folks that aren't is the, I kind of describe it as, the confidence in your ability to learn, the confidence to start on one side of a bridge, not seeing the end of the bridge, but knowing that you have the ability to learn the skills that takes you to get to the other side of the bridge. Because once you get that kind of confidence in your ability to learn, I think it's quite powerful. And listen, you're not going to become an astronaut or a neurosurgeon, but like if it's in your domain, if it's in your field, if you understand the fundamentals, if you have Google, if you have a good brain trust of people to ask questions, like, I'll ask you questions occasionally, like, if you have those resources, you can master pretty much anything in your domain. You can handle any situation in your domain.
So how does that look in terms of like people join Brooklyn Data and they get thrown in the deep end and you say, I believe in you, you're going to figure it out? Like, what is that? How does that happen?
Yeah, I think it happens by giving people resources. So when you started Brooklyn Data, we kick you off with kind of handful of trainings like kind of DBT fundamentals, and we've got a bunch of Confluence pages. You're added to Slack channels for each tool, and that's like you got 100 people in this Slack channel about DBT or Looker or Sigma. If you have any questions, you're kind of paired with peers that kind of can mentor, and you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a senior peer to mentor you. I've learned a lot from my kind of equivalently leveled peers. Like they know something more than they're an expert in something more than I am, and I'm an expert more in something than they are. And just kind of creating the environment where people have the space to learn, have the opportunity to learn, have the kind of the trust to learn. And listen, we're going to make sure that there are boundaries, that they're going to set up for success, and not in a position where it's going to put them in a position where they might fail, where the failure is kind of extreme. But like, listen, you make a mistake in your pull request, someone will check it, and it's fine. I mean, almost creating a culture where people are okay saying that they don't know something. I think that's one of the things we find when people are almost surprised or take the most time to adapt to is kind of admitting when they don't know something and asking. I wouldn't say it's dumb questions, just asking questions. Like so I'm always surprised how many company cultures it's kind of a bad sign if you don't know something. How the heck can everybody know everything? It's impossible. And so creating a culture where we're always learning, we're always helping each other learn, we're always holding each other to high standards. Like there's no coasting. Like our goal at Brooklyn Data is it's a 40-hour work week, but it's an intense 40-hour work week. You're using your brain for 40 hours. And it's kind of cool to, feel at the end of the day, and I'm not an athletic bone in my body, but I kind of think like if I was like, you work out or you do a sport, you're like, you feel your muscles are exhausted at the end of the day and you're building them. We try to do the same thing with learning. I feel like my brain is tired at the end of every day, and I feel like I'm learning something every day.
That's excellent. I love it. As you know, I love asking dumb questions. That's
I know.
one of my favorite things to do. It's like if someone says an acronym that I don't know, I just ask what it is.
But I mean, isn't it shocking like that it how late in life we get the confidence to do that?
Yeah, it's like the fear is like it's like a bell curve. And at the beginning of your life, whatever, we both have kids, right? At the beginning of your life,
no fear.
You ask anything. You don't understand something, no matter how inappropriate it is, no matter what.
Yep.
You have an idea, you want to learn something, you just ask it. Yep. Somewhere we start caring about what might happen if we ask the wrong question, and then we spend a while kind of in that zone, and then at some point, I mean, you go to a retirement home. Trust me, nobody cares about about asking questions about things that maybe they should think about. And so I learned earlier on through painful failures because I didn't ask the questions that I was like, oh, actually, it was really, when I had this question in that meeting, it was really important for me to ask it. And because I didn't ask that question, now I blew myself up. And so you get a couple of those and it helps you get through to the other side.
But it have to be good questions. Like you can't it's not like you have to have Googled it. Like it's always good you try to Google it yourself and try to kind of make sure you're asking it in like a non like fishing expedition kind of way, but actually like a very pointed, specific question. I mean, I think that's actually I was reading on Locally Optimistic. Caitlin Mormon made a great blog post the other day about kind of just this kind of stuff and these skills and being able to ask good questions is one of them.
Yeah, but also part of like any skill, part of learning to ask good questions is asking a lot of bad questions first, right?
Yes. Yep.
I love that. You've been very one of the things that I've seen you also be very good at is the community side, and even even as you're not good. You're not I'll give you some feedback. You're not so good at like being super like proud of what you're good at, because you've been like self-deprecating like 5 times in this conversation whenever I say you're good about something. So it's okay.
Start all my weeks with the call with you, Solomon. This is a good confidence booster.
Yeah, you can own the things you're good at. It's okay. I give you permission. But you've been you really, and I looked back because we've known each other for probably close to 10 years now, and I looked back the other month to our original LinkedIn request where you you just messaged me. And,
I did.
Yeah, no. and you were just like, "Hey, you're at Paperless Post. I'm at Casper. Like, can we meet up?" I was like, "Hey, I'd love that." And I feel like looking at where
that sounds like 2014 me. That definitely sounds.
That was you. And I feel like looking at where you are now, I can kind of play through what that tape must have looked like. Just like sending out every week or so, just another one of those, and then you got like the Solomon, you get you're friends with all of these people now, and you developed a locally optimistic community. And even as you were talking about how you have your team, you've treated your team like a community. I mean, you set up this, like in the way that you're supporting your team members is through creating community. So how do you think about like the data community? And like when you think about how like so many people out there in data are doing the opposite of you, right? So you are like consistently out there talking to people, learning from what's out there. Many people are just inside hacking away. Like, what would you tell those people, and how would you help those people maybe break some thoughts that might not be right about what they could benefit from developing a community, how they can think about community better as it relates to data?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the origin story is like very selfishly, I learn from other people. I learn best from other people. Like, yes, books are great. Watching a video is great. Doing it myself is great. But I learn best by kind of talking to smart people and hearing how they do it well. And I think like chatting with, you, Solomon, chatting with other folks that I met has just been, I mean, that has been the best education I could ever have. And so I would say, like, first of all, to let people know that it is a fantastic education. I think most people don't even realize it's an option. I think the second is just like, do it. Just reach out. There's literally no cost. Like, I mean, just make sure you're always sending someone a message that like it's relevant. You're asking them something specific. You're being accommodating and working around their schedule. I think you'd be shocked how often people will just say yes, because I think the most successful people are learners, and it's silly. I mean, when people will ask me for advice or kind of, I'll learn from them. I mean, it's like I know I'm selfishly getting something out of the call too, and so I would say just help learn from other people, help other people, and don't ask for anything in return. If you help people. If you send positive energy out into the universe, it comes back. Probably, maybe not, maybe tomorrow, maybe not a week or a year or 10 years ago. Like, who would have thought when I sent out the LinkedIn message to Solomon in, I don't know, what is it, 2014, that it would kind of kick off a decade-long friendship. You never know which LinkedIn message, which interaction, which kind of conversation you started a meetup, or person you chat with on Slack is going to be a future friend, colleague, mentor. They might give you a job someday. Like, you really don't know. And it's like, kind of think of this butterfly effect. Like, I just think of these small interactions with people that, I mean, and I'm not joking. Like, the advice you've given me along the way, Solomon, to start in Brooklyn Data has been fantastic. And I would have never had that, if I hadn't kicked off that conversation with you on LinkedIn. And so, like, we could say that conversation on LinkedIn transformed me, Brooklyn Data, like, transformed my future. I mean, like, you don't know what I've gotten here anyway. I'm not quite sure. I think, but just these people better other people. And you never have the benefit of this impact unless you take a freaking chance and just go out and meet people.
I love that. It's great. I am of the personal opinion that you would have gotten to where you are most definitely without my advice.
But I wouldn't have been invited to this podcast.
You would not have been invited to this podcast as the inaugural guest. You probably would have made it eventually, but you probably wouldn't have been number one. All right, I love it. I know we're coming up on time. You've obviously you've gone through the cycle of life with the consulting company, starting it, growing it, working with companies, now selling it and joining up and merging together with a bigger company. Where do you think the big opportunity is next? Are we sort of on a continuing path where companies are still needing to execute on the basics in order to drive analytics for their organizations? Do you see any step changes? Like what do you see coming up in the future?
Oh, good question. When I see step changes, so I think the technologies that we all know and love in this kind of modern data stack are maturing, and the kind of the companies that implement them are maturing. And so, we're now implementing DBT on startups, but we're implementing it Fortune 500 companies. And same with Snowflake and all these other tools. And so what you're going to see is these great tools are finally hitting this inflection point that they've got the robustness, the kind of the feature set, the SOC 2 compliance, the you name it, to kind of be kind of enterprise ready. And so I think that's the first things you're going to do is you're going to see all these great tools shifting into enterprise. On one hand, they're the same tools, but on the other hand, it's like a level of complexity that, we're pushing the envelope from, complexity of organizations that run kind of, modern data stack, scale of data, combinations of technologies. That's kind of where we kind of see the forefront. I guess the other thing is what I'm really excited about and why we decided to join Velir, the company that acquired us, is actually having our clients drive personalized experiences from data. So what we're seeing is just what started as like this kind of trend with reverse ETL, push a couple data points to your ESP and personalized messaging, is actually kind of this beginning of this really excited trend to have the data warehouse be the beating heart of your kind of organization and to drive personalized experiences. And so what we're really focused on is helping our clients not only gather insights, but actually create, a kind of the most complete view possible of their customers, their audiences, their clients, the folks that they interact with, and to drive personalized experiences. And that's kind of in MarTech, it's web personalization, it's just digital experience personalization. Because I don't know, I mean, I think you've noticed, we all noticed, is like humans these days we're used to personalized experiences. We're used to kind of the experience adapting to us and not us adapting to the experience. And so I'm really bullish on, the modern data stack going enterprise and kind of, the kind of the data warehouse being this kind of beating heart of kind of creating a personalized digital experience.
Cool. That's really interesting. And certainly with Delivery Layer, I'm making a big bet on that data warehouse being the heart of a lot of customer-facing product opportunities as well. So I think that's great. All right, Scott, thank you so much for joining. This was amazing.
It was fun.
For people that want to follow you or be in touch, like where can they get in touch with you? Is there anything? Are you hiring? How can people stay connected to you?
Sure. So reach out, scott@brooklindata.co anytime. .co, not .com. We're not making .com money yet. Someday. Add me on LinkedIn. Reach out anytime. See me on Locally Optimistic or DBT Slack. Really reach out. I'm always happy to chat. I mean, I truly mean it. I love chatting with people. I'm excited to meet you and reach out and I'm happy to talk data.
All right. Great. Well, certainly you could tell how Scott has networked with so many people. He just giving everybody permission to go and get in touch with him if you've made it this far through the inaugural episode of the Delivery Layer podcast. So thank you to Scott, and thank you for listening to the Delivery Layer podcast. And see you on the next episode.